Welcome back. Tonight, we return to the Age of Heroes, to the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece, where gods walked among mortals and the line between man and myth was as thin as morning mist. Find a comfortable position, let your breathing slow, and journey with me to the beginning of the greatest hero's tale, the first of 12 impossible tasks that would echo through the ages. Our story begins not with triumph, but with tragedy, and the heavy weight of unbearable guilt. Hercules, whose name means glory of Hera, stood in the ruins of what had been his happiness. The strongest man who ever lived, the son of Zeus himself, had been driven to madness by the jealous goddess whose name he bore. In his divine frenzy, he had destroyed his own family, and when the madness lifted like a terrible fog, he found himself surrounded by the consequences of actions he could not remember, could not undo, could not bear. The hero who could move mountains was brought to his knees by grief. He wandered for days, perhaps weeks, unable to eat, unable to rest, unable to escape the weight of what he had done. The world seemed drained of color. Food turned to ash in his mouth. Sleep brought only nightmares. He had been the greatest of heroes, celebrated throughout Greece for his strength and courage, but now he could barely stand to look at his own hands. Finally, his wandering brought him to Delphi, to the sacred temple where the oracle spoke with the voice of Apollo himself. He climbed the marble steps slowly, each one an effort, and knelt before the priestess in the inner sanctum, where sweet smoke curled toward the painted ceiling. "How can I be cleansed?" he asked, his powerful voice barely above a whisper. "What penance can possibly atone for what I have done?" The oracle swayed gently, her eyes distant, seeing beyond the mortal world. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from very far away, layered with harmonics that made the air shimmer. "Go to Turin's," she said. "Place yourself in the service of King Eurystheus. He will set before you 12 labors. Complete them all, every one, and you will be purified of your guilt. Complete them all, and you will earn a place among the immortals themselves." Hercules bowed his head. 12 tasks. Whatever they might be, however difficult, however dangerous, he would complete them. He had to. There was no other path forward, no other way to carry the weight of his grief. And so he traveled to Turin's, to the palace of Eurystheus, a small, nervous man who had been born king through accidents of fate and timing. Eurystheus had always envied Hercules, always resented him, and now, by the will of the gods, the greatest hero in Greece would have to obey his every command. When Hercules knelt before the throne, Eurystheus saw his opportunity. He would set tasks so dangerous, so impossible that Hercules would surely fail. Or better yet, he would die in the attempt, and Eurystheus would be rid of his rival forever. The king leaned forward, a thin smile on his lips. "Your first labor," he said, drawing out each word, "is to bring me the skin of the Nemean lion. Alive or dead, I care not, but bring me its pelt and bring it intact." The assembled courtiers gasped. The Nemean lion was no ordinary beast. It was a creature of divine origin, born from the monsters Typhon and Echidna, the same bloodline that had spawned the many-headed Hydra and Cerberus, the hound of Hades himself. The lion had descended upon the valley of Nemea like a plague, a creature of nightmare-made flesh. Its hide was impenetrable, proof against every weapon forged by human hands. Swords broke against its flanks. Spears bounced away as if striking stone. Arrows shattered or fell harmlessly to the ground, and its strength was enormous. It could crush a man in its jaws as easily as a normal lion might crush a rabbit. The beast had made its den in a cave near the town of Nemea, and it terrorized the entire region. It would emerge to hunt, taking livestock, taking people, taking whatever it pleased. Hunting parties had tried to kill it. They had not returned. Warriors had gone seeking glory. They had found only death. And now Eurystheus commanded Hercules to bring him its skin. Hercules rose from his knees, bowed, and departed without a word. He did not argue. He did not protest. He simply accepted the task as he would accept all that followed. This was his penance, his path to redemption. He gathered what few supplies he needed. His great club, carved from the wood of an olive tree, so heavy that no ordinary man could lift it. his bow and arrows, his sword. Though he suspected none of these would avail him against a beast whose hide turned aside all weapons, he took them nonetheless. A hero does not go unarmed into the wilderness. The journey to Nemea took several days. Hercules walked through the summer countryside, through olive groves and past vineyards heavy with ripening grapes. The land was beautiful, peaceful, but as he drew closer to Nemea itself, the peace faded. The fields became empty, the farms abandoned, the roads deserted. He came to Nemea at dusk when the sun painted the western sky in shades of amber and rose. The town was silent, doors were barred, shutters closed. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, signs of life, but the streets were empty as a tomb. An old man, brave or perhaps simply too tired to fear death anymore, watched from a doorway as Hercules passed. The hero stopped and turned to him. "The lion," Hercules said. "Where is its den?" The old man pointed with a trembling hand toward the hills beyond the town, where the land rose rough and rocky toward the mountains. "There," he said, "a cave with two entrances, two mouths like a great skull set into the hillside. But do not go there, stranger. The lion has killed everyone who tried. It is not a beast, it is a curse. It is death itself wearing a lion's shape." Hercules nodded slowly. "Nevertheless, I must go." "Then may the gods protect you," the old man said, though his tone suggested he held little hope of divine intervention. Hercules walked on through the dying light toward the hills. He found a sheltered spot among the rocks and made a small camp. He did not light a fire. He ate dried meat and bread, drank from his waterskin, and lay back to look at the stars emerging overhead, the same stars that had watched over him since childhood. The same stars that had witnessed everything, his triumphs and his tragedies alike. Tomorrow he would find the lion. Tonight he would rest and gather his strength. He woke before dawn when the world was still gray and soft with mist. He gathered his weapons and began to climb toward the cave the old man had described. The path was rocky, difficult, and as he climbed higher, he began to see signs of the lion's presence. Bones scattered among the rocks. The remains of sheep, of goats, of things he preferred not to examine too closely. The smell of carrion hung in the air and of something else, a musky, animal scent that spoke of a predator in its prime. He found the cave just as the sun broke over the eastern horizon. The old man had described it well. It was set into a rocky hillside, and it did indeed have two openings, two dark mouths separated by perhaps 30 paces of stone. Between them, the ground was worn smooth, littered with more bones, more evidence of the creature's appetite. Hercules studied the cave for a long time, circling it carefully, examining the approach from every angle. His mind, so often overshadowed by his legendary strength, was sharp and tactical. He understood that strength alone would not be enough here. He needed to think. If the lion had two exits, it could simply flee through one when approached from the other. He needed to remove that option. He needed to trap it. For several hours Hercules labored, gathering heavy stones and timbers, working with the tireless strength that was his birthright. He built a barrier across one of the cave mouths, piling stone upon stone, wedging timber into gaps until one entrance was completely sealed. The work was hard even for him, and sweat ran down his broad back as he fitted the last stones into place. Now there was only one way in and one way out. He stood before the remaining entrance, looking into the darkness within. Somewhere in that blackness the lion waited. His sword hung at his side. His bow was strung, an arrow nocked. His club rested easily in his right hand, the olive wood smooth from years of use. He took a breath, steady and calm, and stepped into the dark. The cave mouth swallowed the sunlight quickly. Within a few paces he was walking through deep shadow, his eyes straining to adjust. The cave floor was uneven, sloping downward, and the passage narrowed as it went deeper. He moved carefully, quietly, though he knew stealth would do little good against a creature with a lion's senses. The smell grew stronger, thick and rank in the enclosed space. Old death and fresh meat, and beneath it all, the living scent of the predator itself. Hercules felt his heart beating strong and steady in his chest. He was not afraid. Fear had been burned out of him by his grief. What could any beast do to him that was worse than what he had already endured? Then he heard it, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from the stone itself, a growl that resonated in his chest and bones. And in the deeper darkness ahead, two eyes opened, reflecting what little light penetrated this far into the cave. They were golden, unblinking, and filled with an intelligence that was almost human. The Nemean lion rose to its feet, and even in the darkness, Hercules could sense its size. It was enormous, far larger than any natural lion, its shoulders level with a tall man's chest. Its mane seemed to float around its massive head like a crown of shadow and gold. Hercules raised his bow and drew. The string creaked. He aimed between those golden eyes and loosed. The arrow flew true, a perfect shot, but it struck the lion's skull and shattered as if it had hit an anvil. Splinters of wood scattered across the cave floor. The lion did not even flinch. Hercules drew again, aiming for the eye itself, the one spot that might be vulnerable. Again the arrow flew. Again it found its mark. And again it failed, glancing away from the beast's eye as though deflected by an invisible shield. The lion watched him, curious, perhaps even amused. Hercules dropped the bow and drew his sword, the bronze blade singing as it left the scabbard. He advanced, and the lion gathered itself to spring. They moved simultaneously, the lion launching itself forward with terrible speed, Hercules swinging his sword in a powerful arc meant to take the creature's head from its shoulders. The blade struck the lion's neck with all the force that the world's strongest man could muster. It should have cut clean through. Instead, it broke, the bronze shattering like glass, shards spinning away into the darkness. The impact of the blow didn't even slow the lion's charge. They collided like falling mountains. The lion's weight bore Hercules backward, slamming him against the cave wall hard enough to crack the stone. Claws raked across his ribs, drawing blood even through his tough skin. The lion's jaws gaped before his face, fangs like daggers, breath hot and reeking. Hercules dropped the useless sword hilt and grabbed the lion by its mane, holding those terrible jaws away from his throat. The beast's strength was extraordinary, divine, but Hercules was the son of Zeus, and his strength was greater still. His muscles bulged as he pushed against the lion's attack, holding it back, but he could not hold forever. He brought his knee up into the lion's belly once, twice, blows that would have shattered the ribs of any normal creature. The lion barely seemed to notice. Its claws dug furrows in his shoulders. Blood ran hot down his arms. They grappled in the darkness, neither giving ground, and slowly, painfully, understanding came to Hercules. No weapon could harm this beast. No blade, no arrow, no spear. The lion's hide was invulnerable, a divine protection that could not be breached by any tool of man. But his own hands, the hands of a demigod, those were not tools of man. Those might be another matter entirely. He released the lion's mane and wrapped both arms around the creature's massive neck. The lion's jaws snapped shut inches from his face, so close he felt the wind of their closing. But Hercules held tight, pulling the beast close in a terrible embrace, locking his hands together behind the lion's neck. And then he began to squeeze. The lion realized its danger and began to thrash wildly, its strength enormous, its desperation even greater. It slammed Hercules against the cave walls again and again. It raked its claws across his back, his sides, his legs. It twisted and writhed and fought with every ounce of its divine power. Hercules held on. His arms, carved from iron and legend, tightened inexorably around the lion's throat. His teeth were clenched. His eyes were closed. Blood ran from a dozen wounds, but he did not let go, could not let go. This was his first labor, his first step on the long road to redemption, and he could not fail. The lion's struggles grew weaker. Its roars became wheezes. Its thrashing slowed. Hercules squeezed tighter, cutting off air, cutting off blood, his strength pitted against the beast's need to breathe. Time seemed to stop. There was nothing in the world but the two of them locked together in the darkness, predator and hero, monster and man, both fighting for survival with everything they possessed. Finally, after what might have been minutes or might have been hours, the lion's body went slack. Its legs buckled. Its great weight sagged in Hercules' arms. He held on for a moment longer than two, making certain, and then finally, slowly, he released his grip and let the body fall to the cave floor. He stood over it, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and looked down at what he had done. The Nemean lion, the terror of Nemea, the beast that could not be killed by any weapon, lay dead at his feet, strangled by the bare hands of Hercules. He had completed the first labor. But as he stood there in the darkness, no triumph filled his heart, only a quiet, weary relief. One task finished. 11 more to go. He bent and tried to lift the lion's body, but even his strength had limits and the beast was enormously heavy. He would have to skin it here in the cave and carry the pelt back to Eurystheus. But when he drew his knife and tried to cut into the hide, the blade would not pierce it. Even in death, the lion's divine invulnerability remained. For a moment, frustration threatened to overwhelm him. To have come so far, to have defeated the undefeatable, only to be stopped by this final obstacle. Then inspiration came, quiet and simple. If no blade could cut the hide, perhaps the hide itself could. He examined the lion's claws, sharp as razors, harder than any bronze. Using one of the beast's own claws as a blade, he began to work carefully, patiently, cutting the impenetrable hide with the only tool that could pierce it. The work took hours. The sun was setting by the time he emerged from the cave, the lion's great pelt draped across his shoulders like a cloak, its head resting on his own like a hood, its paws hanging down his chest. He wore the proof of his victory, and in the years to come, he would never be seen without it. The skin of the Nemean lion would become as much a part of his legend as his club, as his strength, as his name. He walked down from the hills as stars began to appear overhead. The old man was still watching from his doorway, and when he saw Hercules approaching, wearing the skin of the creature that had terrorized them for so long, he fell to his knees. Word spread quickly. People emerged from their homes, cautious at first, then jubilant when they understood what had happened. The lion was dead. The terror was ended. Their nightmare had been slain by a hero whose own nightmares had driven him to this place, to this task, to this victory. They offered him food, wine, shelter, celebration. Hercules accepted their gratitude quietly, stayed one night to rest and allow his wounds to heal. And then at dawn he began the journey back to Turin's, to present himself before Eurystheus and deliver proof of his success. When he arrived at the palace and stood before the throne, wearing the lion's skin, Eurystheus went pale. He had expected Hercules to fail. He had expected, perhaps even hoped, that the hero would die in the attempt. Instead, here he stood, victorious, having completed a task that should have been impossible. The king shrank back on his throne, suddenly afraid of this man who could strangle divine beasts with his bare hands. From that day forward, Eurystheus would not allow Hercules to enter the city. Future labors would be announced through a herald, and their proofs delivered from a distance, for the king had finally understood what he should have known from the beginning. Some men are simply too powerful, too dangerous, too legendary to stand in the same room with lesser mortals. Hercules bowed, as was required, and departed. One labor complete, 11 more awaited. The road ahead was long and dark, but he had taken the first step. In the strangling of the Nemean lion, he had proven that no task was truly impossible, that strength of will could overcome even strength of body, and that redemption, however distant, was not beyond reach. The first labor was complete. The legend had truly begun. And so, for tonight, we leave Hercules on his journey, with the lion's skin across his shoulders and a long road still ahead. Rest well, knowing that even the greatest heroes must take their trials one step at a time, one labor at a time, moving always forward through darkness toward the light. Until next time, sleep peacefully.